Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Mic'd Up Sports. And my guest is someone who was perhaps ready to move on from sports until she joined the University of Minnesota and then took part in club volleyball. And as I understand it, our guest will be going to Bethany next year, Bethany Lutheran, to continue in basketball. Arinn McGee, originally from Pipestone, is joining us today. Arinn, thanks for coming by. And what would you make of your journey? You come to the U and then you realize, oh, I've got another itch. I'm not quite ready to call it a career with sports. What would you make of this story that is taking you to quite a few places so far?
I definitely say that it was kind of eye-opening. I'm a firm believer in you don't really know what's going to happen until you put yourself through it and experience it. I had always said that, like, even if I think that if I went straight into sports, like, out of high school, that I would have ended up quitting because there would have been that unknown that I wouldn't have known what it was like without them. But now coming to the U and being able to have that year and to find myself, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to find myself without being an athlete because that's kind of all I thought I was. Being in high school, I went to school so that I could play sports. It wasn't, I went to school because I wanted to get an education or because I wanted to further that. But now coming to the U and figuring out who I am, I realized that I do want to be an athlete, and now I'll be able to balance the both of them, of the person that I have become through this year and the person who I passed previously which was an athlete. So yeah.
So if someone were to ask you, who are you or who do you think you are, how would you respond?
Oh boy, that's a tough question. I would say that I don't even know. I guess I would say I'm a perfect mix of what's it called, like a ambivert, an extrovert and an introvert combined, because I like to go out and do a lot of things, but I also like to stay in and watch TV. Yeah, I don't even think I would put sports in that, but that's just, I think, I don't like to talk about myself a lot, so it's hard for me to think about what I am.
Well, Bethany, you have your warning now. She doesn't like to talk about herself, so when you do the media days and the guides, all of that, the bios, you might have to find another question to engage her. We tease, of course. But you said growing up in school, you just thought of yourself as an athlete. I know you took part in 3 sports at Pipestone, volleyball, basketball, and track. Mm-hmm. What would lead you to think that you were just an athlete in those days? And you did quite well. I saw some of the accomplishments you got, at least from what I could gather from news clippings. And I remember seeing you at state a couple years ago for volleyball. But how tightly was sports defined or intertwined with you?
I'd say it was pretty strong. Just in our school in general, I would say that, like, if you weren't kind of an athlete, I had a friend that wasn't in any sports, and she always stated that she just kind of thought that she was a nobody just because she wasn't really in any of the activities, and it was definitely more of a sporty school rather than like an art school. We had a lot of just like upsets with the arts, I would say. There was this one girl that went to my school, her name was Brooklyn Geltz, and she was very talented in the arts, and she wrote a speech actually, and she went to the school board because she had felt that some of the arts were being taken away and not as many students were appreciating them, and the staff weren't appreciating them, and just the community as a whole. So I would say that kind of with them setting that hierarchy, I mean, just being a 3-sport athlete, I would say that that's kind of why I felt that way, that I was only an athlete, because, you know, I'd go out in the community and they'd be like, oh, we watched the game, like, you did great, like, that's awesome. It wasn't ever like a, how are you doing, or like a, like, what do you do for fun? It was just always addressed as that, so, yeah.
Well, Arinn, allow me to ask you this. What do you do for fun?
I like to watch TV a lot. I like to watch The Office and a show called New Girl. But other than laying in my bed all the time, I like to go hang out with my friends and go explore Minneapolis, even though we don't do it a lot, but that's just because we're girls and our free time is at night, so walking around in Minneapolis at night would be a little dangerous. But yeah, I like to hang out with my friends, and I do like to play different activities that are a little bit less like athletic, like not basketball and volleyball and sports like that, but just like spike ball or pickleball, like other just low maintenance movement activities. And I like to work out. Go work out every day with my friend Paige and some of my other friends sometimes, so yeah.
Well, I certainly understand your reasoning about being vigilant around Minneapolis, but in my head I'm thinking, if I took a look at you, my first thought is, I don't want to mess with her. I don't think it would end well for me.
I think that too, but I don't know, I still worry. That's why my friends always say that they feel safe with me, because they don't think a lot of people would mess with me. And I agree, but I don't know, I'm still a girl, I'm still a woman, so.
I mean, I've seen you block
Yeah, that's true.
in volleyball, and
That's true.
you're going to be playing college basketball, so I'd like to think you could take on some people here.
I probably could, if it came down to it, but I would like to say I'm a pretty nice person before the violence comes.
Well, I hope you don't mind if I don't test that theory.
Right? No, I don't.
But what was it like for you growing up as an athlete and just as a person, as a citizen in Pipestone? I don't know if that's where you were born or grew up there, but what was that like, getting that small town environment for all those years?
Yeah, so I was actually born in Hastings. My family lived in Wisconsin until I was 3 years old, and then we moved to Pipestone. So basically, from what all I can remember, I've been born and raised in Pipestone. I mean, when I was 3, I can't really remember that. But a small town is definitely boring, I would say. It has its perks, as I've found out throughout all the years. I mean, a lot of my friends like complain, oh, we never have anything to do, but I think that more forced us to hang out with each other more and to kind of create our own different types of fun, you know. I would say that it was definitely hard because I was one of the only few people of color that were in Pipestone. There are a couple other families and a couple of other kids, but dealing with some of the things that people would say and comments that people make, just not even towards black people, but other races too, is just kind of more like entitlement and them not being educated enough. So I would say throughout my entire year, like, I love Pipestone. I always will. Like, some of my best friends are there, some of the best people I've met are there, and my family was there, and even my extended family that are not actually blood that I love to this day are there. So, I don't know. It was definitely an experience. I think that would be what I would sum it up as, but there was a lot of tears in both ways, of happiness and sadness throughout my career there.
If you don't mind, I guess, what were some of those examples or moments? Because it's an interesting contrast where you have a lot of great memories, including going to state at least once. I don't know how many times you got there in your 3 sports, but you also spoke, and I know this is a common sight around the state of Minnesota, outside the metro, being one of the few people, one of the few families of color. And in larger cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the inner ring suburbs, it's not that big a deal. But outside of that, it sounds like there were some times where that came into play, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say one of the hard subjects would just be like people saying racial slurs or microaggressions towards certain races, especially with like when George Floyd happened and when COVID happened, towards the Asian community, just like that, little stuff like that. But I always like to think that the good outweighs the bad, even if there are more bad, because I know that like it is just hard because since it is so small, they didn't have the resources to like get to know what was wrong and what was right, along with them not even trying to figure that out because they didn't really have to, you know.
What were some of the strategies you said you would focus on the good over the bad, but whenever maybe someone came at you in that sort of way, in that aggressive manner, how did you respond to that? How did you make sure it wouldn't get to you and cause you angst, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, it definitely did. I tried to hide it as much as I could. I would talk to my mom and my dad about it a lot because they would always tell me to only focus on what you can control. You can't control other people's behavior, but you can control how you act about it. So just knowing that I can't control them, but I can tell them that it hurts my feelings and that it is hurting to other people and that they're being disrespectful is kind of the route that I would always go. I would say that the longer and the more I would grow up, the lesser it got because people just kind of knew to watch their mouth when I was around, because that I would comment on it or go after them in some other way because it was disrespectful, and I just always they knew that I didn't like it, so yeah.
And I'm guessing over the years they also knew that you could go up there for blocks and get layups. So
Yeah.
I joke with friends, if anyone tried to give them a hard time, it's like, all right, one-on-one, let's do it.
Right. Yeah. Most of the time it was the boys, so they knew that they could probably beat me, but yeah.
I don't know. I think you would have held your own. Well, and something else, and I ask this a lot of my guests who fit into that category, but you're 6'3",
I'd probably say closer to 6'2".
6'2", 6'3". Well, you're up there. I
Right.
remember looking at the programs, and
Yep.
even when I got to see you play in state volleyball, you were the tallest player on the Pipestone team. But what was that like growing up? I'm guessing you were the tallest figure, one of them in your class.
Yeah. So
What was that like for you?
Yeah, there was two other girls that were the same height as me until like about 8th grade. That's kind of when I grew a little bit taller than them. There was actually a girl who was taller than me for quite a little bit. But I would say, I don't know, I like being tall, so it was fun. It was exciting. I always used it to my advantage. So I guess the knee problems suck, but other than that, I would say that it was good. I don't think there was any challenges with it.
That's a trend I've noticed among younger guests of mine, older ones who were at your height or maybe above, below, right around it, would often talk about finding clothes, shoes, any kind of apparel that would fit. Is that something you've dealt with? Or?
Yeah, I would say, that's just been my entire life, so it's just something I adjust to. People have to realize that I might not be able to find jeans that are long enough, but I'd say that's a recurring problem. Or growing out of them within a couple months is another problem that I had growing up. Yeah.
Being here and then even where you're headed to next, I think Bethany's in Mankato. Was that a problem finding apparel? Because in a smaller town, I'm thinking, I'm sure there are vendors, things like that, but anything that might be more suitable for taller people who have to find bigger clothes, if you get where I'm going with this.
Right, yeah. I don't know, my advice is to check out men's sizes. They normally run a little bit longer and they just fit better than women's sizes. But I never had any problems. In Pipestone, the closest city to us where we would buy a lot of our clothes would be Sioux Falls. So we would just go there. And or just find stores that have extra long versions, like American Eagle, and a lot of places are actually getting more tall friendly options, I would say, as the years go on. So you just kind of have to look and trial and error thing, hold up to your waist, see if they're going to be capris or if they'll be long enough. Yeah.
When you say capris, what is that exactly, to find out if they're long enough or if they'll be capris? What does that mean?
If they're going to be your flooding pants, or if they're actually going to be to your ankles.
Reason I ask is because I've never had that problem.
Right.
Finding.
Right.
I'm only 5'11", so yeah, most places have stuff in my size.
Yeah.
So what got you into sports? Again, you played 3 in high school, and that's continued in college, the sports side of it. What got you into it at Pipestone, and which of the 3 did you perhaps enjoy most or found the most enlightening?
Yeah, so I would say that my parents kind of is what got me started with it. My dad was a college athlete, so he played at a couple different JUCOs. his career. So then, obviously, I mean, it just kind of runs in the family. And like I said, Pipestone was a sports-orientated like community. So everybody kind of just starts out in sports and just continues to follow through their journey or whatever. I'd say that I didn't even start track until my 7th grade year, my 8th grade year. I was in softball, but I just didn't really like it that much, so I wanted to try something different there, and then that's why I went into track. But my favorite was volleyball for the longest time, until I kind of realized that I like basketball a little bit better. That was probably like my sophomore year is when I realized. And then we had this really silly coach in basketball, and I was just kind of confused, I think, because he kind of just threw me off a little bit. But then, in the recruiting process, they always just said that I would probably have the best luck with volleyball because I'd played so many years of club. So then I went into that. Then I realized I didn't really want to play volleyball. I kind of liked basketball a little bit more. So then that's when I decided that I should just kind of be done and figure out who I am, because I had all these options on where to play and what sport to play, but I didn't really want to do that. I just wanted to figure out who I was.
And what do you recall from your high school experience being a 3-sport athlete? Because, again, I got to see you at state a couple years ago, but that's about all I could find. And I would see a few clippings, as I mentioned before, but I truly have no idea how your sports career went at Pipestone. But what do you recall? What do you reflect on when you look back on being a 3-sport athlete?
So I guess like some of my accomplishments would be my junior year in track, I made it to state in shot put, and I placed 8th. And then going around that next year would have been my senior year, and we came to state volleyball as a team. Then basketball, we didn't do so hot. I think we got out 2nd round or 3rd round, one of those. And then during that basketball season, I actually broke 2 school records. I was the first person to break the record of getting a triple-double in a game. I actually got a couple of them. I can't remember how many. I think it was like 4 or 5.
So you were the first to get a triple-double?
Yep,
I think
in
is what you're
Pipestone. In
saying.
Pipestone history, yes.
Okay.
And then I also broke the record for single-season rebounds, which was, I think, like 287 or something like that. So, and then my senior year track, I didn't make it to state. There were some other people that were very good, so they beat me out that year. And I was having back problems anyway, so that kind of threw it off a little bit. But reflecting on it, I would say that it was my entire life. So it was a lot of hours in the gym, a lot of friendships that grew from it. One of my best friends, I don't think I would have met if I wasn't in sports. So, yeah.
Well, the rebounds I could see, I'm guessing you were a center or the 5 on your basketball team. But for shot put, I've had some guests who were track athletes, but most of them would participate in the running events, or I think in the Olympics they refer to them as athletics.
Right.
Here we call it track and field, but they would stick to the track. And I know some of the taller people that I've run into do your shot put, your discus, the throwing events, the field events. What goes into that for shot put in terms of training? Because you're not running down a track like some other folks are, but I've seen how far some of those young kids can throw, and there's a lot that goes into it, so it's not just flinging it as hard as you possibly can.
Right.
But what was that like for you? Because I haven't met too many people who would take up the shot put and events like that.
Yeah, it was a lot of technique, a lot of years, and a lot of practices of just primarily focusing on the technique. I mean, it's just always something. I mean, you get your feet right and you're dropping your arm a little bit too much, and then you worry about fixing your arm, and then your feet are wrong, or you're not pulling through all the way, or your hips aren't getting through. Luckily, I had some coaches that were very, very good, and they helped me figure out that we just needed to break it down like step by step and work on that individually. And then once it actually came down to the meet, just to not even think about a single thing or focus on one singular thing, whether that be making sure that your head is up or something like that. And then the rest would kind of just trickle through. The good thing about being in track and being in field events is that you get multiple attempts. So you could enter the ring at one point and one thing could go wrong and you could be like, okay, let's just focus on this one thing because everything else was good. And then it kind of just brought everything back the way it was. So, yeah.
Who were the athletes or others that you looked up to once you settled on that track? Who were the people that inspired you to keep going when you were an athlete? Well, I guess you still are an athlete. What am I saying? I can't talk past tense yet.
That's true. I would say a lot of the people who would encourage me the most were a lot of my friends. Honestly, every single one of the track girls and guys. It was a very, very positive environment, and I would get down on myself a lot just because that's how I am in general. I'm very hard on myself in being an athlete and everything, but the specific person in throwing would be a girl named Emily Nelson, shout out. And she was a grade older than me, and she stuck it through all her years and just helped me all the time. She would help me with little critiques and everything else that I worried about. She was there for me, helped me through and through it all.
Was there anyone that you watched growing up and said, "Oh, I would love to be like this person"? It could be volleyball, basketball, track, or anything. Were there any athletes or role models that you had?
Yeah, there was a lot of girls. I mean, there was a lot of girls that were just like in the same sports repeatedly. So just like all the upperclassmen, we would just watch them play and we would just be like, oh, like we're going to be them when we're older. Not any one specific, but just kind of the different classes throughout our years of graduating. We would just pick out somebody and be like, yeah, that's going to be us.
I think you're the first person to reference upperclassmen. A lot of people, when they come on, usually talk about a college or pro athlete, but it's interesting that you took inspiration from the people you grew up with or got to see at Pipestone when you were an underclassman.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say like just being in a small community, like you really get to know a lot of the people in some way. I mean, they start to teach you, like there's camps and that they teach or that they coach, and you kind of go and you get to literally be taught by them, and then you just are kind of like they're your role model. So yeah, growing up with a lot of upperclassmen, they were always very nice, always kind of step by step with them.
Another thing I've heard, and you talked about this before we started taping, in the smaller towns, there's the old line, everybody knows everybody, and as you touched on, especially being in sports, when you go to these places that are far from metro areas, like you said, not a whole lot to do compared to being in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and having a lot of entertainment options. So what was that like, having some sort of celebrity status, is what I'm gathering, where you would go out there and people were saying, "Oh, great Gabe," like they would see you all the time.
Right. It kind of just came as second nature, I'd say. Like whoever was talking to me, like I said, I knew who they were. So it was kind of just a matter of fact of if I didn't, I would be like, "Oh, like whose parents are those?" or like whose grandparents are those? And then yeah, I would just talk to them and talk to them about their day and tell them thank you and thanks for watching, because honestly, we wouldn't have been able to get anywhere without our supporters. I mean, you know how much energy can change a game. Without all of our community and all of our parents and faculty that were there and cheering us on, we wouldn't have been able to go anywhere.
How did you handle getting all that attention? It sounds like you appreciated it, but for a teenager, I'm guessing that's quite a bit, even if maybe I don't hear what's going on in those smaller cities unless they make it to state, but being the center of attention at such a young age, it sounded like it was exciting, but I'm wondering, what did you make of all that, being one of the faces of Pipestone for all those years?
I don't know. I would say I took it in a way of younger people looking up on me as well, because I would say that a lot of the younger girls would look up at me and my teammates as well for them wanting to play like us, just like I wanted to play like the upperclassmen when we came. So it was kind of more of like a role model, and since all that attention was on me, I knew that I needed to be a positive role model and a positive person so that they could see that that's what it's like, being an athlete and being somebody who's known.
Now, a moment ago, we discussed all the technique that went into your shot put performances in track. This would seem obvious, but what are some of the differences between doing a sport like track where you're out there, you're part of a team, of course, but you're competing on an individual basis, you're not going up against your teammates at the same time, and then you go to a team sport like volleyball, basketball, where you've got to communicate, you have to mix it up with fellow teammates. What would you say are the differences? What did you learn about that? And how do you think that perhaps enhanced your experience getting to be on a team sport and then getting an opportunity to play a team sport but on an individual level?
I would say that being in track was definitely a little bit more, I was like harder on myself because I was the only person. Not that I would ever like blame my teammates for anything in the other sports, but like it was more of just like a fallback, you know. It was more of like like we all could have done something different. Like it's a team collectively thing. Like we lost because we didn't do something together. Like we didn't work together well this game or something like that. But in track, it was like I was the only person who I had. Like there was nobody to go talk to, or there was nobody to bring up, and sometimes I wasn't able to bring myself back up. I mean, obviously everybody has bad days, bad meets. And it would be like very anxious for me. I just would remember like trying to not have panic attacks just about right before I'm about to step in the ring, because I would just be so nervous and so scared that I was just gonna let myself down or let my parents down, even though they would never ever be sad about that or about me competing poorly. But it was just all like a mental head case thing. And with like being in the other sports, I think they all like correlated with each other, that like being in volleyball like helped basketball and being in basketball helped track. So yeah, being in all those different sports, I think that they all correlated with each other in ways that they all helped each other and helped in my athletic ability to do some things differently.
How would you assess, how would you analyze, break down the mental element that goes into it? Because I know that's something you speak frequently about on your social media. Yes, I stalk everyone's social media feed. No, I don't do that. But when you meet somebody for the first time and you're trying to figure out, who's this person about, and we all can see our stories, what was that like for you? Because it sounded like for volleyball, basketball was a little easier because you weren't the only person out there. In track, I can understand the pressure because no one else can influence what happens out there except you. So mentally, how did you cope with that when you felt perhaps some turbulent moments approaching?
Yeah, I would say I would honestly try to like disengage a little bit. I would try to think about different things because I knew that like that training and all the hours that I put into it would all come through. It was just the matter of fact of like me thinking that it wouldn't. So I would say that like me and my coach on meet days, like I would always tell him like, don't talk to me on a meet day. Like we can talk about after how my performance was, but if you come talk to me and like try to tell me to fix something, like that's all I'm gonna focus on. I'm not gonna think about actually performing anymore. Like say he told me that I need to step a little bit farther on my first step, then I would have only been thinking about that and I would have hyperfixated on it, and then everything else would have kind of just crumpled, rather than me just being like, okay, let's not think about anything. Let's just go out there, throw. Let's go out there and compete. Let's go out there and play basketball. Let's go play volleyball. and then we'll come back to it when we watch film or when the meet is over.
On that note, how would you say your mental health has evolved over the years? And I'm not looking for traumatic incidents per se. I'm not looking to try to capitalize on someone else's misfortunes, but I don't see too many folks at your age who are at least willing to discuss it publicly or offer their support. And that's not to suggest other athletes aren't one with themselves, but was there a moment or situation, or is it just something you grew into as far as coming to terms with that aspect of who you are?
Yeah, I would say throughout all of my years, I would say I've definitely grown mentally. There's just been like different occurrences just personally that have pushed me forward more and made me kind of become that person and made me kind of excel more than others, I would say. I wouldn't put anybody past like their age maturity, obviously, but it just kind of depends on the person and their environment that they grew up on. There's just been a lot of up and downs, and I've kind of just learned how to deal with that myself, kind of, and through the help of, I guess, being religious and kind of reflecting on God's path for me and knowing that no matter what I do, I'll always have Him, and He's always going to love me no matter what. So no matter how I perform athletically, like personally, I'm always gonna have God. Yeah.
Was that something you would draw upon when you felt perhaps a panic attack or a moment coming in? You talked about disengaging, but I don't know how often they occurred as an athlete, but when those episodes are threatening to impede whatever you're doing, was that something you would go to, or were there other strategies that would help you as well?
Yeah, I would always start with praying. I just always felt like that was just always a good starter. And then it always kind of just made my mind just go somewhere else, just because it was probably God doing His work, trying to distract me from bad things happening in my head and bad thoughts and negative thoughts. But yeah, I would say that was definitely my first step. And then after that, I would either like call my mom or somebody in my family, one of my friends, go to my friends and just have them talk to me about how they were doing or something like that.
And I'm curious, even though you didn't make it to state in basketball, I do remember Pipestone, I think, winning a championship years ago, but you were really, really little.
Yeah, was it
when
05
that
or 08 maybe?
I thought, 07
yeah.
maybe? 07, 08.
One of those years.
So probably not old enough to really
Nope.
understand its significance, but when you found out you were the first woman ever to get a triple-double and then set the single-season rebound record, what do you recall when either your coach or somebody who was keeping track said, oh, by the way, no one has done this before, and now you're the first?
I honestly didn't believe it, especially, I guess I forgot to mention that I also broke the record for blocks in a single season, but I didn't think that was also in basketball, blocks in basketball. I just didn't believe it. Like, my teammates would always be like, no, Arinn, like, you literally had like 20 points and like 10 blocks. And I was like, it did not feel like that. I was like, it did, I don't know.
It felt like 30 and 15, didn't it?
No.
40-20. You're like, what, I didn't get more?
No. It felt like I always did less. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know. That doesn't make
You really are
sense.
hard on yourself.
Yeah. I don't know.
Arinn, you should remember, you're more than just a number.
Yeah. I don't know. I always didn't believe it. I was like, no, like, I didn't get that many. Like, I didn't feel like that. I don't know. It always just felt like I was just out there playing with my best friends. I don't know, I was never counting, I was just playing. I never worried about the stats or about, I don't know, I didn't worry about that, I just played.
I'm just wondering, well, again, Pipestone is miles away, so I didn't get a chance to see you play in high school, but I'm thinking if I was there while you had one of your triple-doubles or one of those records, and if I brought it up in a postgame, what the reaction might have been like if you didn't believe it happened. If I threw that in your face, you'd be like, what?
Yeah, our announcer, he's a good guy. He's funny. When he first told me, I was just like, what? But I think I got told by one of my family members, I think, before, because the first one was a doubleheader. So he was talking to the boys' head coach before he was going to talk to me, because we did like a player of the game type of thing. So whoever like kind of stood out that game would just be the player of the game and then go talk to our announcer. So yeah, when he first told me, I mean, I was obviously like honored and I was proud of myself, but yeah, I don't know. I didn't think that I did it. So I was like, yeah, like that's cool. You know, just kind of, you don't know what to say when, yeah.
What do you think put you in that position? You talked about the reps and the practices you'd put in for track, but for volleyball and basketball, there's certainly practices with that, of course, too. But what do you credit to putting you in that position to set a few school records?
Definitely my teammates. I wouldn't have been able to do anything without them. I mean, to get those points, they have to pass me the ball. They have to loop the ball correctly. They have to be there. They have to be boxing out as well. I mean, with them, with all of their help, I mean, that's what a team sport is like. I can't do anything without them, and luckily I was there for them as well. I mean, we had been playing together since literally the beginning. I mean, some people we had fanned out. Coming in to basketball, we had 15 girls when we first started the league. We had 15 girls when we were younger. And then, you know, obviously gymnastics takes a couple because basketball seasons switch or whatever, and then some people just dropped or whatever, and then at the end, our junior and senior year, we only had 5. It was the 5 starters, and then, yeah, so we had just been playing with each other for so long, and we all just kind of knew, like, what we all needed to do, and if somebody was slacking, we'd kind of just pick them up and be like, you got this, like, we're here to pick up for you, like, get out of your head, and then we'll succeed from there. But yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do anything without my teammates, and that's in any sport, even in track. There were so many times where I was such a head case, and I would walk back to that shed, and then my friends would talk me out of it, or they would help me in some other way, or they would just distract me. And yeah, like I said, they're some of my best friends, and I'll say that to the day I die. But yeah.
What do you think it is that leads athletes to maybe be harder on themselves than they should be? And this isn't to put any blame on you or to suggest that you have a problem with it, but what do you think leads to that environment where folks can start playing head games with themselves, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it comes with, honestly, I think it comes hand in hand with education. I do. Kind of always thinking that there's a right and a wrong, and if you're wrong, that you're lesser, or if you're not as academically intelligent, you're nobody, and then just carrying that into anything that we do. I think that when I came into sports, I was kind of like, oh, I need to be good, like I need to do good. Otherwise, like I am a failure, I am failing, like that's part of who I am. So if I'm failing at being an athlete, like maybe I'm doing good academically, but that's still part of me failing. So I think, honestly, just growing up in the society that we do, and now sports are so popular. Like, there's so many watchers on the NFL, on NBA, anything. The
Women's
Olympics.
Final Four?
Right. I mean, now women's basketball is just finally getting all the attention that they deserve, but it's like, the more attention that they get, the more that they think that they have to compete better and better and better. And it's honestly sometimes probably not enough for them or not enough for certain people. And then they just get down on themselves. And that's where, yes, I do say that I get down on myself a lot, but then I do go and I reflect and I do think about who I am and that it is okay that everybody has a bad day, because without those bad days, we wouldn't be able to have good ones. So. Yeah.
And something I've always told athletes as I've gotten to know them when they're playing or when they're done, I've always said, as long as you remember that you're more than what your stat line or record says, you'll do fine. Because I have seen a few examples of parents getting a little overzealous or agitated if their team isn't doing well, and I started thinking to myself, there was a time when I was more of that fan, and you tie your worth or your well-being to that, and then you realize, what am I doing? But I try to emphasize, at some point, everyone will move on from being an active athlete in terms of high school, college, pro, and then you'll go on to other avenues, and people aren't going to remember how many points you scored. They will remember some of the memories that you talked about, where your teammates would be there to help remind you, hey, there's more to this than how many feet you got on your shot put throw or how many points and rebounds. So I always try to remind folks, hey, it doesn't matter where you are on the rankings, all of that. Those are all just numbers. They don't say anything about you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you can be an insanely good ball player, thrower, any activity that you do, swimmer. But I mean, once you step off that field, like how you're treating people is how I'm going to remember you. I say that with anybody. I remember I did get the experience of watching Caitlin Clark in the Gophers gym, and she is literally amazing. But some of her actions and the way that she would just treat some of her teammates and the other players was just crazy. And like, that's what I'm going to remember the most. Like, she is an amazing player, like one of the best I've ever seen in my life. But I just could not shake how she was, some of the looks that she was giving and some of the actions that she had.
I got to cover her a couple of times in high school. Didn't sense the same thing, but she was in Iowa, and her high school team would come up here to do a Thanksgiving invitational, so that's how I got to see her play. But right, body language, I know there was another athlete at Ohio State who was a skilled point guard, but would tend to show it. And one of my friends who played on the Gopher women's team had said that was part of our strategy, was to get in her head, kind of rattle her psyche, her focus. And I'm not saying people shouldn't have emotions or be total cyborgs, but all of that adds up too. People are watching every part of you to try to glean and then on her end too, you're talking about how people will remember her, what you would take away. You might have seen that press conference where that columnist from the Indianapolis Star, I think, had a pretty condescending remark directed at Caitlin. And when that made the social media airwaves, I'm going, what are you doing? Like, I've never thought about approaching a woman that way when I do pressers or when I do one-on-ones. I'm like, no, you're an athlete. We're just having a chat about your game or you as an athlete. That's it.
Yeah. I would say some announcers, they like a lot of commotion, a lot of chaos. So they tend to put athletes in any way in certain questions that kind of have to set them up in bad ways or in ways that they'll get a lot of commotion from it. So that just comes with the press, I guess, certain people. But yeah, I think kind of going into that with, once again, having a lot of popular tendencies and popularity, I think you just kind of have to be ready for, honestly, any questions that would be thrown at you and just how to react to them in the correct way.
Getting back to your time as a Pipestone Aero athlete, you mentioned going to state a couple of times. So what do you recall from those experiences? I know that wasn't that long ago, but you got to play the full 3 games in volleyball and getting to compete in state for track. Again, it's a little different there because there's a team score, but only so many athletes attend state based on who qualifies out of the section. But what do you remember getting to take in the state tournament experience?
It was super cool. The most things that I loved were watching other people in their events and seeing how good they did, and seeing just other people compete awesomely. It was so cool to watch. I mean, even though we didn't do as good, it was so cool to watch awesome volleyball and awesome people throw and awesome runners. That's what I'll remember, is just being I don't even know how they can run that fast. I don't know how they can throw that far. Just watching the pure skill and pure talent that some of the people had, was awesome. I think that, and being with my best friends and hanging out with them and getting to, just talk about how we did and how the day is going to go and watch them compete as well would be some of my favorite memories and some of the things that I'll always remember.
You circled on this earlier in our conversation, but when you were approaching the end of your high school career, you talked about recruiting and wanting to take a break. Were you getting any looks for any of the three sports while you were in high school, and what led you to take that semester off? And I say semester because you got to play club volleyball. We'll touch on that in a moment. But what led you to step back for a bit to find yourself, as you were talking about earlier?
Honestly, I would say it was my indecisiveness. There were a couple of different colleges that were looking at me, and it was more of, in that moment I still was thinking, like, do I want to continue doing sports? Do I not? So I had just toured a couple of colleges, and I had reached out to them, and they had reached out to me. Some of them were smaller, and then some of them were bigger too, and I just didn't know like where I truly wanted to be. So I wanted to put myself in an environment that was a healthy environment and was very big and diverse, so that I could just get everything that I needed and all of that support. And there was so many resources through the U that I knew that that's kind of where I wanted to be, somewhere big, that I could fall back on those things, and that if I still wanted to get a little bit of sports, I could get that through the club teams or through the intramurals. And then I just kind of made my decision that I didn't want to be a full athlete. I wanted to just figure my thing out, and that I always knew that it would be there if I wanted to fall back. And then, yeah, I guess talking about the club volleyball, that's kind of what I fell back on. But then I realized it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough competition for me. And then, yeah, I kind of went, that's where my friend Aubrey helped me out with the whole Bethany situation, and yeah.
Well, you took us in that direction, but your first semester, you just focused on being a student. Second semester, you decided to take up club volleyball, and I know it's a lot different than Division I college volleyball that we're used to, with how well the Big Ten has done. I know Minnesota had some great years. Nebraska set an attendance record with their outdoor game, but what led you to take up club volleyball, and how does that differ from the college volleyball that we're all accustomed to seeing on television?
Well, I guess I don't have any experience with college volleyball being
a
participant.
Right. Well, I'm guessing you went to some games though as a student. So,
yeah.
But just club is a little different because I know there's some high school sports that are like that, but they're not sanctioned by their respective entity. That's what I was getting at. So you're playing, but it's not the NCAA tournament that we're all used to seeing.
Yeah. So I kind of knew that I wanted to do club volleyball because first semester I was missing it a lot, but I knew that it was going to be a little bit rocky just because it was my entire life, and it wasn't just going to be easy to just drop sports immediately. But I did take that first semester to really find out who I was as a person, and there were also some dips in my mental health again, just because there is anybody's. But that's when I kind of realized that maybe I should kind of step back into athletics again, but just not as far. So I did a little bit of intramurals during that first semester, but it wasn't near as much. Some of the people, it was just hard because a lot of the people hadn't ever played volleyball before. So being on the intramural team with people who had never played a sport before with my competitive self was a little bit hard for me to keep the patience, but it was okay. So then I joined the club team, and I was playing around people who could have also had the opportunity to go play somewhere, but they also just wanted to be at a D1 school and not have that commitment. And they were amazing. There are some amazing people there. Also some of my best friends now that I've met through there. But playing, there was only about 4 tournaments throughout this entire semester, and I'd say probably 5 last semester, but I wasn't a part of it then. And they were very spaced out, so it was almost like it wasn't enough for me, like we would only compete for the weekend, and it was too 2 nights a week for practices. So it honestly just was not enough for me. And like I said, I kind of figured out that basketball was my main sport. So kind of trying to cover up that void with volleyball, like, it didn't help. You know, it was like trying to cover a gunshot with a Band-Aid, I guess. Like, it was not helping whatsoever. So I realized that, and then that's when I kind of went home and I talked to my friend Aubrey about it, who is playing at Bethany right now. And then she had talked to me about talking to her coach. So yeah, one thing led to another. And then, yeah, I've decided that I'm going to further my education and my athletic career there in basketball.
You're the first person I've ever heard using that analogy, covering a gunshot with a Band-Aid.
Yeah,
Like,
I say a lot of weird things, I guess. A lot of weird analogies that my friends make fun of me for. So.
no, I understood it. I'd just never heard of that before.
Right.
I got the reference, so it's not
Right.
like it was out of left field, but
Right.
like, yeah, the visuals there, I'm like, oh, that seems a bit intense.
Yeah, it's maybe a little intense, but it sums it up.
I hope that's not experience talking.
No,
Yeah.
no, it is not. I'm glad it is not.
That would be really awkward.
Yes, it would be painful, I would feel like.
Yeah. Well, that's my thing. I go into these weird tangents.
It's all right. That's all right.
Well, what are you most excited about? Because you're going from well, you didn't play D1, but you're going from a large school in Minnesota to a smaller college, Bethany, and they're in D3, I think. Are they in the
Yep.
UMAC?
Yeah, I think so.
Right, there's
Yes.
UMAC and MIAC. I don't remember Bethany being in the MIAC, but you'll be scaling down, so to speak, but you'll get a chance to be an athlete again. So what are your emotions, your thoughts, excitements, nerves, all of that as you suit up and get a taste of that competitive athletic program that you've been seeking?
Yeah, I'm so excited. I've been telling a lot of my friends that it's honestly a bittersweet feeling because I have like established my life here now. Like I have established some of my best friends. I have met some amazing people, and now to just kind of pack up all those things and leave, it's going to be really weird. It's especially weird because like I'm not leaving mid-semester. I'm leaving for the summer, and then I won't be coming back. So it's almost like it won't be happening until I do move into my apartment at Mankato and I do start school at Mankato. I would say that I'm a little bit nervous about starting over and having to reestablish friends and get along with the teammates or all of my teammates now. But I would say that I'm a very outgoing person and I like to talk to a lot of people, so I don't think I'll have a lot of troubles talking to anybody or establishing new friends, but it is just something that's on my mind. But yeah, overall I'm so excited. I can't wait to play basketball again. I'm super excited to go home for summer so that I can start practicing again and I can start getting, I'm already in the gym like working out and lifting, but it's not the same as being in the gym with basketball and a basketball in my hands. But I don't know, I'm so excited. When I think about it, I smile and I guess I geek about it a lot. So yeah, I'd say the main emotion is excitement, but there's definitely the little other emotions that trickle in that I'm sad and nervous and other things about, yeah.
I guess we'll find out next year if you remember how to get rebounds and blocks down there.
There it is, yep. Yep, back to basics, I guess.
You know, maybe you can get another triple-double.
Hopefully.
I've come across some athletes who went the D3 route. One of them ended up setting all kinds of career records at St. Catherine's. So I know you have, you missed a year, so I don't know about the career tallies, but
Right.
I think you got a chance to make some history there. And
Yep.
I guess from your experience, what would you say to anyone else that might be going through what you went through, where you were a three-sport athlete, that's all you knew, you decide to take a break, take a step back, see what life has to offer, then jump back into it. I've met athletes who maybe started at a small college and finished D1. I haven't met many who took time off and then got back in the game. What advice would you have for anyone else who might be going back and forth about what they want to do with school, sports, etc.?
That's a great question. I would say honestly, following your mind, following your heart. You get a lot of different outside opinions, and whether you take them into consideration or not, I think that you really need to ultimately do what like you want to do. And that comes with a lot of self-reflection and maturity. I don't think that a lot of people are able to do it sometimes because they do just kind of follow whatever their family wants them to do or whatever they just think is right. I mean, some people just think since they have an offer, like they're just gonna go. Whereas like I had those offers, but I really didn't picture myself in those places or in those towns, and I really needed to reflect on that and be like, am I going to be happy in that situation? And you just need to sit down and reflect and think about all your options. And I mean, always knowing that you can go back is helpful. I mean, I don't know if I would have been able to do it if I didn't have an opportunity or I didn't have a friend, but it's really, if you put your mind to it, you can really do anything. I think you could have found anything, I could have found anything, as long as I would have tried hard enough. So just weighing out all your options and doing whatever you think is right, plus with putting in the time and putting in effort, it's not going to be easy. And as long as you're okay with hearing everybody criticize you or even encouraging you, but you just have to know when to take that criticism and when to not, I would say. But yeah, I don't know. It was hard. I'm an indecisive person too. I didn't know, obviously, that I wanted to go for sports because I ended up taking a break and then coming back. And yeah, not a lot of people do that. And it's probably going to be very hard for my body and for my mental state because I've been off for so long, and the physical state that I'm in right now is nowhere near what I was in high school. So it's going to be hard, but it's all going to be worth it, I think.
And what do you plan to, I guess, continue studying? Because you are a college student now, but what goals, what plans? Maybe this isn't the best question for an indecisive person,
Right.
but
Right.
what are you looking at as far as options or what you hope to get out of Bethany as you continue your education there?
Yeah, so I'm majoring in elementary ed, and I was going to minor in coaching here, along with special education and maybe as well Spanish. But they don't have I don't think they have a special education minor at Bethany anymore. So I'm just going, or coaching actually. So I'll just be majoring in elementary ed and minoring in Spanish. So yeah, I mean, I'm still going to plan on being a coach. That's kind of why I'm leaning towards education, or I lean towards education, because I do want to be a coach, and I want people to have that positive role model and environment in the sport, because a lot of athletes do end up quitting because of coaches, and it's a really sad thing. It's a really sad thing for me that is what makes athletes quit, and that's what makes a lot of people quit just any activity that they do. But yeah, I hope that I can bring a positive environment, not even only in the school, but also in the sport that I teach and anywhere else that I go. That's all I aim for, is that I don't even care that people remember me as an athlete, as long as they say that I'm a good person and that they like to be around me, is what I like to hear.
And it sounds like you'll also be able to offer your services as a translator for any Spanish speakers you might run into as a coach.
Yeah, and just like in education systems, a lot of light is not shed on just people who speak foreign languages, not even just Spanish, but the U.S. is growing in so many different ethnicities and races that we're just not educated on enough. So as long as I can help that a little bit, that's what I try to do.
Have you tried out any coaching before? Well, I suppose you were focused on being an athlete and classes, so maybe
like I
not.
said,
But I'm curious if you've gotten a chance to test the waters, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, like just with the underclassmen, like sometimes they would ask me questions about like what they were doing wrong or what they can do to improve, and I would help them that way, and they would always just be like, oh, like I could so see you as a coach, like you would be a great coach, like we want to be coached by you one day. And like I said, like the upperclassmen always would run like the camps or whatever that I would attend. So then once I became an upperclassman, we would run the camps too. So I did get a little bit of a taste of the medicine of coaching along with teaching as well, because I would sit in with some of the teachers. We had like open hours or whatever, and I would go and sit in their classrooms to kind of get the feel of what being a teacher would be like, or shadowing in a sense. So yeah, I have tested the waters, and I loved it, and that's kind of why I knew I wanted to go into education and coaching, because I both shadowed it, and I was like, yeah, this is something I would want to do in my future.
It would be way too premature to suggest where you're headed, but you mentioned coaches can sometimes play a part in whether an athlete continues or not. You probably have heard about the parents who get a little antsy, that maybe put a little too much stock in kids' games. How do you plan to balance that? Because I'm guessing those things will be there if you decide to take up coaching, especially at the youth level. And I'm not doing this to scare you away, but I'm just wondering, as someone who has been an athlete and has received instruction from coaches, and then as someone who offered feedback and got to be sort of the coach on the floor, coach on the field, how do you plan to approach coaching, and how would you adapt or encounter, how would you handle parents who, or athletes themselves, that might get a little too caught up in the moment? Because I know that's another thing that has affected a lot of coaches. One of my late friends wrote a book about the politics of coaching, and officials too. You see a lot of that flack that people sometimes get, and in some cases even for winning teams. So I'm just wondering what methods, what things you have learned in case you were to ever run into that as a coach yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a very open-ended question. I could probably go on about it for a really long time, but...
Well, you can go in any direction you like, because I'm curious, you hear this all the time, and I ask that question because we often talk to fellow coaches. Well, you're an aspiring coach. I don't know what level you want to get into, well, with elementary and maybe junior high, high school, but it's a reality now, and you hope there are ways to combat it, but that might be something you have to face.
Yeah.
No matter how good, bad, indifferent your team is.
Right. I would say kind of going in with the approach of like, ultimately, like, yes, we are here to win and we are here to like do as best as we can, but like at the end of the day, like, you are still a person, and it doesn't really matter like your win and losses, kind of how we were talking about. It really just matters like what type of person you are. And yes, we're here to play, we're here to win, like we're here to do our best, and I want to make you a better player. Like that is our goal. But if we're kind of tearing away at that just because we want to win, and tearing away at the person who they should be, and being a good person, and just focusing on forgetting your morals and just wanting to win, I mean, that's nowhere where anybody wants to be in life at all whatsoever. So I don't know. Obviously, I'm still very young, and I haven't got an actual coaching experience fully yet, so I can't say a full approach on what I will do. And also, I said that I'm always somebody who thinks that you can't really comment on something until you're actually in the environment, or until you actually go through it, because that's just how it is. You can sit here and say that you'll do one thing, but when it actually comes around to it, what are you actually going to do could be different than what you said you were going to do. So yeah, I would say coming at it with the approach of we're here to win and we're here to play, but like it's not your whole life whatsoever.
And who knows, years from now, the strategies you might have in place could change, and you just never know what life will throw at you either. And it's something that I guess I've paid more attention to after I had a parent come at me one time because I didn't say enough nice things about his kid. Turned out he had a grudge with someone else. It's a long, complicated, tangled story, and he waited months before he even came at me like that, and I didn't respond. But when I told fellow coaches of that story, they found it amusing and baffling at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's a reminder that, unfortunately, it's out there, and there are going to be some folks who maybe overemphasize how much playing time they get, what their win-loss record is, what their stats are. There's a lot of people are competing for spots on college rosters, especially D1, D2, because they offer scholarships. So it's a sad reality. And I would hope when you get into coaching that maybe things ease up a bit, but just something, it sounds like you're aware of what you might have to face. And there's a lot of good that comes with it too, getting a chance to lead the next generation. But I know that's something, not only does it affect the players, but it can also affect coaches. And in some cases, we've seen some high quality ones leave because of that.
Yeah, I think that you kind of have to have thick skin is thick skull, because people do try to ruin anything that's good, honestly. I mean, that's just how life is, unfortunately. And I've always thought about, like, because coming from a small town, like I said, everybody knows everybody, so the coaches know the parents, and it's easy for everybody to talk to the coach or whatever. And I think that as I become a coach when I'm older, that I'll kind of just distance myself from, obviously having a good relationships with the parents is one thing, but having them be fully your friends and in your ear is another. I think you need to, as a coach, you need to trust your staff rather than just outside voices. You need to be confident in yourself and in your game and that entire structure before you let anybody else's opinion come in. And parents are hard. I mean, they're always going to be, it's sad because they want what's best for their kids, but some of them do it in poor ways and in more harsh ways than others. And like I said, you can't control that. Nobody can. And the only thing that we can do is react. We can ignore, and we can talk with our players and let them know that even though their parents think that way or they treat them that way, that we're still here for them as a staff, as an entire community, and that they don't have to worry, because not everybody's going to be upset with them at the end of the day or going to be mad at them. But it's hard. It is hard. I don't know.
Well, you can attest that.
Yeah.
You were hard on yourself. You wanted to compete, and you wanted to feel like you were performing to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
That can weigh on you. But it seems like you have a grounded approach, a grounded ideology in mind when you make that transition. If you decide to go that route, who knows where your career could take you. I know you talked about maybe trying broadcasting at some point, doing media stuff, and the world is your canvas, Arinn, so you could take up any direction. And what I find most fascinating is all the ways you can stay involved in the game, whether it's coaching, broadcasting, and other places, so that when you do decide to call it a career in sports, you'll still find a way to stay in the game.
Yeah, that's what I like. Kind of with the education route too, you'll always be surrounded by it either way, because I can be in it in the actual school vibe, or I could do a different club vibe, or something more professional.
There are a couple of questions I like to ask of my guests who are a part of this program, but we'll start here. I know your career in sports isn't done yet, but so far, what has been the most exciting moment and the most embarrassing moment?
Oh boy. I would say the most embarrassing moment would probably be airballing a free throw in the middle of a game. But, I mean, I shook it off. I just laughed about it. But it was pretty humbling, I'd say. And
you're not the only one.
Right.
I've just about everyone has had an airball or two.
Yeah. And then one of the most exciting, I would say I have two. I don't know why, but every single time that your name just gets announced as one of the starters and you just hear that crowd go crazy, it's just something that I just can't even explain, like the adrenaline rush that I get when I hear that. That would be one. But then the second one would be in high school, like going to state and going far and just winning big games, like just running up to your friends and your teammates and hugging them and just shedding those tears with them tears of happiness of we pushed so hard and we tried so hard and we put in all this time and all this effort and all of the summers and all of that work, and it all paid off. Just it actually paying off. It's one of the most exciting things ever.
That's a good answer. I thought of something else too. If you thought airballing a free throw was embarrassing, I mean, at least you didn't break the backboard or knock off the shot clock, anything like that.
That's true. That's true. I don't think I've ever hit the shot clock. But also, our school didn't have shot clocks, so.
Right, they didn't get
Didn't
put in
have it
until this
until-
past season.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's like an airball, like, okay, I think everyone
Yeah.
has those, but
Yeah.
it could have been a lot more awkward. I mean, you could have knocked out a ceiling light, you could have
That's
sent the
true.
ball through a window, you could have hit somebody and knocked them out, so.
That is true.
If the worst thing that's ever happened to you is airballing a free throw,
It's probably good, yeah.
I like to think you had a good run.
That's true.
So, and you know what? I'm guessing you've got your form down, so when you go to Bethany, that will never happen again, right?
Yes, hopefully.
Well, you'll get to hear your name being called again.
Yes, that's true.
And I guess we got a tease from you already, but what would you say is the most unusual thing about yourself that people wouldn't know if they met you for the first time?
Oh boy. That's a really hard question. I don't even know. Let me think for a sec.
Are you saying you're just that weird or just that boring?
Probably both. I'm weirdly boring. Just kidding. Something that somebody wouldn't know about me. Wouldn't guess. I don't know. Do you have any ideas? I know. I can't think of anything, honestly.
Well, it could be a hobby, an interest, a favorite film, TV show, music. It could be anything. There's no wrong answer here. It's one of those things going back to you're more than your stat line. Just something that
Right.
makes you who you are.
Okay, well, I guess I have two. One thing is that I love to make TikToks to the point where, like, I try to be an influencer sometimes, along with my Instagram. But the second thing is that I love horror movies. They're like, okay, well, specifically thrillers, but I love watching scary movies. It's like, I say that I hate it when I'm actually watching it because I jump all the time and I'm scared, but at the end of the movie, I'm always like, oh, that was awesome.
As one of your besties over here, Amalia, is here to put up with our shenanigans.
Yeah.
Has she put up with this firsthand, watching scary movies and seeing you?
No, we haven't watched a scary movie, honestly.
Maybe that'll be one of your summer, well, you two are in different cities, but maybe you have a meetup and
Yeah.
do a scary, I got it, a scary movie-thon that
There
you
it
can
is.
stream or clip up for your TikTok and
There it is.
Instagram just to see
Yes.
how often you jump and make us wonder why you punish yourself
That's true. We could.
when scary movies
That's a good
would
idea.
see, it would sound like scary movies would have the opposite effect if you're jumping all the time, but you enjoy it. So I think that would be a fun little thing. Just run a counter.
Yeah.
Play a movie and then clip it up.
Run-
See how many
right.
times Aaron
Guess
jumps
how many
in
times
fear
I
and
did.
horror and trepidation.
Right. Yeah.
That might make you an influencer.
That's true. That's true.
Well, at least you're trying. You probably are having more success than I am. I've joked that I have a TikTok channel, but I have no idea what to do with it because I don't know how to be funny.
Well, that's just harsh. That's just strictly harsh.
Again, my weird thing is self-deprecating humor. If I can tee myself up, I will go for it all the time. No, actually, I've done some things. One of my hobbies is like recutting videos to make them more silly and get other people in on the joke. I'm not trying to make fun of them and go, ha ha, look at that fool. But it's like, what's something I can do that would be completely ridiculous and gets people to laugh? So that's my thing. But no, I've learned there isn't really a magic formula. You just got to stay with it. And then some videos take off, others don't.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
yeah, I've said, I have these channels, I just don't know what to do with them, so I just try out everything.
Yeah, that's the best way to go, I feel like.
What's your favorite scary movie or franchise if you have one?
My favorite scary movie is Hereditary. But my favorite thriller is probably, it's either Get Out or Us. It's Jordan Peele movies. He's just amazing.
So Jordan Peele films are your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say it's my favorite genre, but I've enjoyed those that aren't afraid to take a more comedic approach. Megan comes to mind because it was marketed as a horror film, but if you had a chance to see it,
Yeah.
you realize, yes, it is a horror movie, but it's also over the top. Like,
Yep.
they just embrace the silliness
Yep.
of the premise.
Yep.
And I wouldn't call it a horror. Well, I guess it would. Shaun of the Dead's another one. More of a zombie movie than a horror or thriller, but it goes to the idea that, it doesn't have to be the cookie cutter typical film. It's like, no, you can have those elements, but have fun.
Right.
I like having fun, I guess.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned from this conversation. How can I make something more silly, more fun?
Yeah.
All right. Well, it sounds like you and Amalia have a summer project if you two can work out.
Now we got one.
Work out some kind of summer meetup.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking, I don't know if there are any theaters out in Pipestone or.
No.
There's probably a bunch in Milwaukee.
For sure. Yeah.
We'll have to work on that. We'll have to sort that out.
Yeah.
Follow Arinn's social for details. No,
there it is. Yes.
And again, you still have a long way to go. You have another adventure awaiting you, another chapter to write, at least one. But up to this point, with everything you've experienced as an athlete, coming to terms with yourself, both mentally and physically, as a person, as an athlete, what would you tell a younger version of yourself?
Oh, boy. I would say buckle up, because you don't even know what's coming. You do not know what's coming.
And it's just good safety procedure, too.
Right. I mean, right, if we're talking more than one way, correct.
Sorry,
But,
I'm always looking for dual reference. It's too. I jumped on you, though. You said buckle up, you don't know what's coming, and
Yeah.
you're going to add something exquisite, I think.
Right. Yeah, I don't know about exquisite, but I would just say that everything that you go through and all of the tears that are shed will all be worth it one day. Just gotta stick through the hard ride.
And this might be hard to believe, but is there anything else about your story as a person who came from Pipestone, as a three-sport athlete who's going to be a college athlete again, anything else you'd like to add about your story or what we should expect from you next?
I don't think so. I guess I'm a big advocator on mental health, and not even just through athletes, but through everybody. And so, that's kind of the way I like to influence people. I like to post motivational quotes and just real quotes and actual motivation that I come up with and that I jot down on every platform to make sure that everybody knows that they're loved, and even if they think that they aren't, that I love them in some way, and that, once again, to turn back to their faith if they think that nobody does or they think that they're lost, that Jesus will always be there.
Well, Arinn, I'm glad we finally got to make this work. It's been an adventure trying to make this happen.
Yes, it has.
Well, there is one contrast between the two of us. Part of it is with my sports schedule. I have to figure out dates and times because I keep getting call-ups. People are asking me, can you cover this game, this game? It's like, okay. And you told me you've never used a calendar or planner in your life?
Not to write down what I have going on during the day. No.
I'm guessing Google Calendar is your friend, like when it comes to Bethany and being on basketball. Is that going to...
No,
because you're going to have to write down practices. Yeah.
It's probably just going to stay in my mind.
So I tried doing that too, and for the most part it works, but the older I get and the more assignments I get, the more I've had to go to Calendar or Google Docs and just write in dates so that I don't forget and get double booked. That's what happens when people think you know what you're doing.
That's true.
I'm amazed. I have convinced people to believe
that you know what you're doing.
Right. I would think everyone... I would think people would have wised up by now and realize I am clueless all the time and just go...
Well, you must be a good liar then.
I'm apparently really great at the art of deception because people think I know what I'm doing as a broadcaster.
Got them fooled.
I guess so. Well, except you, right?
Right.
You're too smart for me to fool.
Yeah, I know that now. You also told me your secret now, so I know.
Well, once again, Arinn, thanks for stopping by and enlightening us. I'm excited to see what comes next for you and appreciate how thoughtful, how considerate you are at such a young age. Every athlete, I think, goes through different phases. Some adopt that as they get older, and I've met some who are about your age. Dahlia McKenzie comes to mind. She was a Miss Basketball and highly spiritual person, and that has helped her through all kinds of situations. But it's always refreshing to see someone trying to be considerate, trying to be empathetic, and doing their best to create that positive influence you were talking about with a prospective career in coaching.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I mean, I just been through a lot of things, and I just want people to be aware of that and be knowledgeable that they're not the only ones and that somebody will always be there for them whether they believe it or not.
Well, Arinn McGee, thanks again and best of luck as you become, is it a Viking at Bethany?
Yes it is.
Yeah, Bethany Lutheran, so you will see her back on the court next year in basketball, and well, maybe there's still a little time to try volleyball again, maybe on a club team or a rec league team.
Yeah.
You seem to like doing all the sports.
I do like.
Was there any sport you didn't take up?
Oh boy, yeah. Well, I was never a runner. I don't like to run, but I guess I did start running because I was going to train. I was training for half marathon, so I guess I did start running. But I don't know. Probably a couple. I can't skate, and I've never played soccer, so there it is.
All right. Well, maybe that'll be another video series for TikTok and Instagram. Arinn tries new sports.
There it is.
Well, hey, if you're taking up running, I could see why you like volleyball and basketball so much because you don't have to go far.
Right. Yes.
There's some running, but not like track or marathons.
No.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. Well, we've given you a lot of ideas, and who knows, but I'm excited to see what comes next for you at Bethany Lutheran and beyond.
Yes, thank you.
Arinn McGee, once again, Pipestone graduate, soon-to-be student at Bethany Lutheran. And if you have a story you'd like to share with us, you can just hit us up on social media. Because if you have a story, we are always happy to share it. So until next time, thanks for watching.